It's been it's been an incredible start to the podcast over the last year or so. And as the year closes out, I really feel like it was only appropriate, or it is only appropriate, to take a moment and reflect back on the lessons learned and the biggest takeaways from the conversations I've recorded and released so far this year. Just to say this up front, there are still several episodes recorded that haven't been released yet. They're coming. I know I'm behind, go figure. But hopefully early in the new year, everything will be headed out. But what I wanted to talk about today isn't a recap of individual episodes. It's more about what surprised me. I knew that these conversations would be fun. I knew that they'd be informative. What I didn't quite expect was how often I'd leave a recording and immediately open my business journal that I keep and start writing down different things about the industry, different takeaways, different things that challenged me to think how I want my company to operate. I wrote about relationships. I wrote about where things feel broken and where they feel misaligned. So I want to walk through on this, let's call it episode, a few of those lessons, not tied to any specific guests or anything like that, but instead tied to the ideas themselves. Maybe the biggest one that has been across almost every single episode without me intentionally trying for that to be the case, is that trust has to be taught, not assumed. One of the earliest realizations I had is that trust is a much bigger issue in this industry than we like to admit. We talk all about collaboration, this, that, and the other. We talk about team approaches, but you can't just say you want a team approach and then expect clients to understand why that matters. In today's world, people are inundated with information. They're told to question everything. And unless we take responsibility for educating them about why alignment matters, why trust across the entire team matters, then the system breaks down. And when trust isn't clearly established, what happens is subtle, but in my opinion, very dangerous. Teams start jockeying for position, for influence, for the ear of the client. And that dynamic doesn't serve anyone. Not the architect, not the builder, and certainly not the work itself. So knowing that trust doesn't just happen automatically anymore, we have to acknowledge it has to be explained, modeled, and reinforced. And for me, that means it's actually an industry obligation as a whole. Calm is in control. Control feels calm. This one really stuck with me. At one point, someone said something that was incredibly simple but incredibly revealing. They were just describing a project of theirs as kind of just being easy. Not because it was small or not complicated or anything like that, but because of simply who was involved. And that made me reflect on how we show up as professionals. Everything about truly excellent work feels calm, not rushed, not reactive, not chaotic. We've all been on those projects where there's countless fire drills and you seem to lose the plot. And so for me, calm doesn't mean passive. It means prepared. It means thoughtful. It means bringing solutions instead of noise. Everyone in the process wants to feel in control. We have to acknowledge that. Clients want it. Architects need it. Builders are expected to provide it. And in my opinion, when control is done right, it feels calm. That idea has specifically informed how I think about leadership, communication, and responsibility for me and within my own company. And that this concept of calm isn't just like a personality trait. It's a professional discipline that takes practice. Listening is a form of leadership. This one challenged me personally. There are moments that I have to stop and ask myself whether I'm forcing details into a project because I want them to represent the company as a whole or the next phase of what Fernhill will be, or because they are what the project itself actually needs. There are absolutely projects where I'm being hired to assert a strong point of view, to push, to elevate, and challenge assumptions. And truthfully, I love that work. We're good at it. But not every project needs that. Sometimes the best outcome comes from listening more than asserting, and from understanding what the client actually wants, not what we think they should want. Granted, we have an obligation to make sure everyone always stays informed, but at the end of the day, it is the client's project. And I think that building dream homes is less about imposing a vision and more about interpreting one correctly. And in order to do so, speaking for myself, I think it requires humility, it requires restraint, and it requires the willingness to separate the ego from the service itself. Listening isn't passive. It's how real problems get solved, and I have to remind myself of that. Disciplined design beats accidental creativity. One phrase that we use internally here is that the best projects are disciplined design executed at the highest level. And when I say disciplined, I don't mean conservative. I mean intentional. Creativity doesn't just happen by accident, in my opinion. Great work isn't random. The process has to be intentional. The decisions have to be intentional. The execution has to be intentional. And I think that's what modern building demands. So when discipline and creativity work together, I don't think that the result is rigid. I think a better word would actually be that it's refined. Another lesson, alignment makes better work. I've learned about myself that I do the best work when I'm seen as a creative partner, not just an executor. When there's mutual respect between the disciplines, whether that's the architect, designer, tradespeople, engineers, any outside consultant, everything from top to bottom, the work just gets better. Full stop. But I don't think that alignment just happens by chance. Like I said before, it starts with the owner, it requires education, and it requires everyone in the room to understand that role. That's part of why this podcast exists. It's part of how we interact with clients. It's part of the broader effort to make the process clearer, healthier, and more honest. The biggest thing I've learned about myself through all of this is that I want to be challenged. Not just arbitrarily so, but I want to be challenged to build really good things, to solve complex problems, to make budget smart and disciplined decisions without defaulting to cheap or reactionary thinking. Sometimes the best solution for me is more efficient. Sometimes it's more expensive. Sometimes it's more architecturally ambitious. The point is, it's complicated, and complexity requires intention, and intention requires trust. So the overarching takeaway for me is this. I set out with the goal of building the coolest shit out there. And something I've learned is that I think if I'm not doing that, at least in a capacity that feels honest to myself, I think I'll just do something else. And it's not because I'm bored, not because it's hard, not because I think I'm better than or anything along those lines, but I just think that life is too fucking short to do just average work. And I'm thankful for this podcast because this first year of it didn't teach me how to be louder. It taught me how to be clear, and clarity about values, standards, and intent is what builds trust in construction and collaboration, and also, potentially most importantly, in the work itself. So thanks to everyone who's been a part of this ride for the last year. There is a lot more to come. We have very, very, very big plans for this upcoming year. And I'm excited to see where this journey takes us.